Welcome to the Financial Flossing Podcast with Ross Brannon, guiding dental professionals to a brighter future. Ross Brannon is a financial advisor who knows it's not just about your teeth. He helps dental practice owners protect and maximize today's cash flow to plan for tomorrow's cash needs. Find him at rossbrannon.com. On the show, he brings together experts to help dental professionals looking to make smart money decisions to grow their income, turn their retirement goals into reality, and improve their lives. And now, here's your host, Ross Brannon.
Welcome to the show. Today, my guest is Brannon Moncrief, CEO of McLerran Associates. They are a sell-side M&A advisor who is an expert in DSO transactions. Brannon, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ross. Thanks for having me.
This is the first time in my life I've met someone whose first name is my last name. So this is pretty cool just by default. So that's nice. So tell us a little bit about what you guys do, because there's a ton of brokers out there. And I think you have probably some strong opinions on the brokers out there. So just tell us what you guys do and how you're different from everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that question. So I was a dental lender for almost 10 years before I became a broker. So worked with pretty much every dental broker across the country and decided that I wanted to become a broker / sell-side advisor because I knew that we could do it differently, do it better. So what makes us different is most of our team comes at this from a finance and banking background. So we really understand the complexities involved with calculating EBITDA and deal structures and dealing with private equity and dealing with DSOs. And we've built out a very buttoned up process that makes the sale process very predictable. So we work very, very hard to make sure that our clients truly understand the options available to them in the marketplace. And we look at ourselves as a sell-side advisor and advocate, not just a broker. Our job's not just to bring buyers to the table. Our job is to educate our clients and empower them to make good decisions for their business on a short-term and long-term basis. And once we get through that discovery process, if it makes sense to take the practice to market, we bring a lot of optionality to the table and perform at a very high level to help the client maximize their economics and find the right fit.
And you said something earlier when we were talking offline that you guys, it sounds to me like you guys manage a lot of expectation, and I might even say drama, ahead of time. And because of that, 95% of the practices you take to market close. Is that correct?
That's correct. We spend a great deal of time getting to know our clients personally and professionally. First, trying to figure out what is their why, right? Why are they interested in going down the path of affiliating with private equity or a DSO, and then digging into the numbers and quantifying what the financial outcome will look like, what the deal structures will look like if and when we go to market, so that if we decide to go to market, we're all swimming the same direction. They know what to expect, both from a fit perspective, a deal structure perspective, and evaluation perspective. They know what the process is going to look like. They know what EBITDA means. They know what arbitrage means. They know what private equity means. They know what DSOs are. And through that education process on the front end, the vetting on the front end makes the process much smoother and more predictable in the back end.
Now, we're talking about DSOs a lot here, but you guys do doctor-to-doctor sales as well, right?
We do. Yeah, the company was built, over 35 years doing primarily doctor-to-doctor practice sales and transitions. But about 5 years ago, when we saw private equity come into the dental industry and begin to consolidate it at a rapid pace, and we also saw DSOs kind of learn how to stay in their lane from the perspective of allowing the doctors clinical autonomy, but simply supporting them from an administrative perspective, the DSO option became a lot more legitimate. So with DSOs becoming more legitimate and more acceptable and more palatable to practice owners, and then just a huge influx of capital that we saw come into the market, we pivoted and added another layer to our business and built out a team to handle clients that are looking to go down the DSO path. And that team, it was timely in the sense that because most of us come from a banking and finance background, dealing with private equity and DSOs all day is a natural fit for, our previous careers. And we have CPAs on the team. We have a former investment banker, Wharton MBA, Penn Law, team members. So we've got some pretty sophisticated, horsepower behind our team.
And it's typically really a different demographic on someone who's selling doctor to doctor versus someone who's selling to a DSO, is it not?
It is. So typically our doctor to doctor clients, you're talking revenue under 1.5 million a year. In many cases, they're selling and looking for an immediate exit. Whether it's, a retirement strategy or they're relocating or something of that nature. Whereas on the DSO side, our sellers typically have revenue of 1.5 million, 2 million plus, multi-provider practices where the reason they're looking to sell is not for an immediate exit. It might be for, exit planning, eventual retirement, but it's typically they're looking to unlock the equity in their business. They're looking to de-risk. They're looking for administrative support. There's the reasons that people sell to a private doctor, versus a DSO are often very different.
And you guys work nationwide, correct?
We do. From a doctor to doctor perspective, I strongly believe that you need to have boots on the ground in that geography to perform at a high level. So we focus our doctor to doctor business on Texas. We're headquartered in Austin. We have boots on the ground all throughout Texas. From a DSO private equity perspective, we work nationwide. We've currently got transactions going on, California, Washington, all the way to New York, Jersey, down to Florida. So really have the whole country covered from that perspective.
So we were talking offline, and I was talking to you about, the fee that an advisor like you guys typically charges, that many times the DSO will basically absorb that or pay that fee. And you made a really interesting point that makes a lot of sense in how that is the case, but you guys choose not to do that because ultimately whoever pays you your fee is who you're working for. When you explain that to dentists, is that eye-opening for them? Because I know a lot of them liked the idea of someone else paying the fee.
Yeah, in our opinion, whoever pays your fee is who you represent. So DSOs have approached us and offered to pay us what they call buy-side fees. So if we bird dog a seller for them, they will pay us a fee for bringing them that transaction. The problem with that is they want that transaction exclusive. Typically, they're only willing to pay a fee if I'm bringing them that transaction where they're the only buyer at the table. And we believe that you have to create optionality in order to maximize your economic return and in order to find the right fit from a culture, operational, and deal structure perspective. So we believe that buy-side advisors or people that even disguise themselves as sell-side advisors that get paid by the DSOs are not truly representing the practice owner. They're representing the interest of whoever is paying them. So we only represent sellers, therefore we collect our commission solely from sellers. And that makes we're swimming the same direction as our clients. And we're insanely protective of how we run our process and who we put our clients in front of. I don't ever want to be persuaded to only show my clients certain options because those are the only buyers that are willing to pay me a fee for that transaction. Does that make sense?
I think it makes perfect sense. And I think when you position it that way, I think people really should consider what you're saying, because a lot of people, they'll say the opposite side, but what you're saying makes logical sense.
Yeah. And from a fee perspective, if we're charging, let's say 6%, 7%, whatever it is that we're charging, that is so easy to make up in regards to enhancing the economics by bringing multiple options to the table. On average, our client is going to see a 20 to 25% increase in valuation by utilizing us and our process comparative to taking the practice to market on their own or using some sort of buy-side advisor that's paid by the DSO.
Now, I know you have some strong opinions on the industry. So without basically saying anybody's name or bad-mouthing anybody specifically, talk about the state of the brokerage industry and kind of what's out there and just kind of educate our listeners what to watch out for.
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, going back to whoever is paying the fee is who you represent. So if the DSO is paying the fee, the person that's claiming they represent you they don't truly represent you. I think you need to be watching out for the fact that a lot of the old school doctor to doctor brokers are now trying to pivot into the DSO space, but they don't really have the relationships. They don't really have the knowledge to deliver value to their clients. I would also be careful about, a lot of these roll up concepts that some, brokers or groups are out there pitching where you pay a fee to join my co-op. I'm gonna put 50 different practices together, bundle them, and pretend they're a DSO, what we like to call like a duct tape DSO or a DSFO, if you will, and then take them to market collectively and sell them to the same buyer for a much higher multiple or valuation than they would sell for independently. That concept does not work. It certainly does not work in today's environment. We're in the middle of a bit of a banking crisis. IPOs are on hold, recaps are on hold for the time being. The dumb money has left the dental industry. So a lot of private equity is on the sidelines right now.
So let me stop you right there. So I've know people who say they're going to pull, 7 to 10 to 15 practices together of people, and they're going to obviously get an aggregation multiple that they wouldn't get if they were selling by themselves. And you're saying that sounds good. That was maybe a 3 or 4 or 5 year ago move, but today that move will not work.
That's correct. Even 3, 4, 5 years ago, that move was very difficult to pay off. Private equity is smart, right? And they can see right through the thin veil of illusion that's created by, bundling together a bunch of unaffiliated practices and trying to act like they're one business. At the same time, it's extremely difficult to convince 10, 15 different practice owners to all sell simultaneously to the same group at the same deal structure at the same valuation. So both sides of that equation are incredibly complicated to pull off. And in today's environment, with, private equity being more conservative, with banks being more conservative, with IPOs and recaps on hold, it's just not palatable to the marketplace.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what makes McLerran different than all the other brokers out there? I mean, you don't even call yourself a broker. You call yourself a sell-side advisor, which I think is really good. But I mean, you talked about the doctor guys. They're now trying to pivot up. I mean, there are former dentists who are now brokers. You see and like you talked before, there's like not even licensure required to be a broker. Like in real estate, you have to have a license, but there's no license required. So talk about kind of the state of the market from the standpoint of who the providers are, from the brokers to the true advisors to everything, without trashing anybody, of course.
Yeah, there's only a handful of people in the space that really have the pedigree, the process, and the relationships to educate their clients and then deliver at a very, very high level in regards to providing the optionality and the economics that, large practice owners deserve if they're going to take their practice to market. So I think it's important to investigate if you are looking at using a sell-side advisor. And by the way, I highly encourage anybody that's looking to go down the DSO route to hire a sell-side advisor, to build a team of professionals around them rather than trying to navigate these waters on their own, particularly right now when the market's in so much turmoil, mainly caused by what's going on with banking. But, what is their experience in the space? How many transitions have they been involved in, both from a doctor to doctor and a DSO perspective? Are they truly advocates for the client? And are they focused on just getting a commission, or are they really focused on figuring out what is your why and empowering you with all the information and the resources necessary to make a smart decision? Is a DSO sale a good fit for your business? And if not, great. Hit pause, maybe pick up the conversation a couple of years from now, or pivot to a private sale. It's really, from our perspective, all about educating doctors regarding their options, their EBITDA, their valuation, and then if it makes sense, executing at a high level, not trying to convince somebody to do something because it's in our best interest rather than their best interest. And that, from a broker, from a sell-side advisor perspective, is hard to do unless you're doing significant volume and your bills are paid, right? And we're in a situation where we're blessed to be very, very busy. Our bills are paid. We're not worried about our next transaction. So it allows us to give our clients purely objective advice and not steer them in one direction or the other.
I think one thing it's important to realize is, whether it's a 3, 5, 10, or $20 million transaction, that's the only time most people have ever had a transaction of that size, when they're selling it, and likely is the only time they will have a transaction that size. Private equity does this all day, every day. If you think you're going to win against private equity on your own, you are crazy.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll relate it to the real estate industry. So selling a house is not that difficult, right? But most of us will go hire a real estate agent to sell our home. That is a pretty simplistic industry where there are readily available comps, and it's highly, highly regulated by the government. And really, it's a financial decision, and for most people, not a highly emotional decision. When you're talking about your business, it's an income-producing asset. Most doctors have an emotional tie to their business, and it's the most valuable asset that they own. And from a process perspective, it's the Wild West. There is absolutely no government regulation of private equity, DSOs, or how these transactions occur. So if you're going to hire a real estate agent to sell your home, which is a relatively straightforward transaction, you sure as hell need to hire a sophisticated advisor to help you navigate these waters, because anything goes in this environment. And look, private equity is somewhat predatory to some degree. Their goal at the end of the day is to buy the asset for as low as possible and sell it within a 5-year window for maximum return. Our goal is just to hold their feet to the fire, keep them honest, and make sure that, one, our clients know what they're getting themselves into, and two, leverage competition to find the right fit and get the best economics.
Tell us some war stories. Tell us some of the scenarios where, someone had a terrible experience with someone who wasn't as sophisticated as McLerran, and they came to you, and what you guys were able to do.
Yeah, so often the war stories involve doctors going to market on their own without representation. Their buddy sold to a DSO and introduces them to this DSO, and then they start what they think is going to be a casual conversation. And before you know it, they provided all their financials and inked an offer. I'll use an example that really just happened. And this is a practice in the Atlanta area. Very, very strong practice, EBITDA over $1 million a year. And we started interacting with the doctor when there were already a couple of buyers at the table, and there was already one offer on the table. And that offer was $6.75 million on, I'd say, a top tier Class A asset. And after some back and forth, doing evaluation, talking about options, the doctor, to some degree, reluctantly decided to engage us. And when they engaged us, we took the practice to the open market, including putting it in front of the buyers that were already at the table, one of which had already made an offer, and we ended up bringing him 8 offers. And we actually ended up selling to one of the buyers that was at the table when we walked in the room, the buyer that had made the offer at $6.75 million. Ultimately, through controlling the narrative regarding EBITDA and bringing optionality to the table, holding that buyer's feet to the fire, that practice traded for $10.5 million. $6.75 million to $10.5 million, simply by following our process and creating a competitive environment.
That's a 67% increase.
It's a massive increase. Millions of dollars.
Yeah. I mean,
I can tell stories like that all day.
Yeah. And and one of the things you talk about is you talk a lot about you said a lot of people focus on the multiple. That's what you hear people talking about. Right? I got 8X, I got 10X, I got 7X. And then a lot of people talk about cash up front. Oh, I got 70% cash up front, and my earnout's not as long. But one thing you talk about is you talk about vetting the buyer. And I've heard stories of people selling for a crazy multiple And then within 6 months, they left the DSO because it was such a nightmare experience. So they left that 30 or 35% on the table, but it was so bad. So talk about, what you think the most important thing is and why it's a big deal.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. Everybody talks about EBITDA multiples, but a multiple of what? EBITDA matters far more than the multiple matters. Every dollar of EBITDA could be worth $7, $8 in value. So controlling the narrative regarding EBITDA is critically important. But I would argue that who you sell to, fit, and deal structure are equally as important or more important than the upfront valuation. The reason being is if you're going to sell to a DSO, you're going to stay on for at least 3 to 5 years, maybe longer. You want to partner with somebody that is positioned, one, to help you solve for your why, right? If you sold because you want administrative support, well, you got to partner with somebody that can actually deliver operational support, not just, a duct tape DSO that has no infrastructure. So partnering with somebody that's going to solve for your why and then be a good partner to you ongoing and not try to reinvent the wheel or, damage what you've built. You want to be happy working there post-close. So fit is critically important from clinical, operational, cultural perspective. We talked about EBITDA being more important than the EBITDA multiple. From a deal structure perspective and from an equity perspective, making sure you partner with somebody that's got the pedigree to actually reach a recapitalization event and accomplish the financial outcome that they promised on the equity component. There's going to be likely a holding company or a joint venture, equity component of any of these transactions that you enter into. And if done well with the right partner, the second bite of the apple at recap could be as significant as the first bite of the apple. But if you never get there, or the return is severely muted as compared to another buyer that maybe had a lower upfront offer, but offers a really good deal structure, a lot of arbitrage opportunity on the equity, and a really good working environment. I mean, I would argue that over that 3 to 5 year period, the lower offer on the front end would have been a far better choice than just chasing the highest valuation if you never really get to a place where the equity component matters. Or you're miserable post-close.
Well, I think that's really important because I've seen DSOs who talked about they were entering the market. There's one particular DSO from a foreign country. They were entering the market, and they're supposed to be everything the cat's meow, and it took them like a year and a half to close their first deal because there were obviously some challenges. Now, I would probably not want to partner with that DSO and take an offer from that DSO because the probability of things, working out on the back end on the recap, as you're talking about, are probably not as likely as other partners. Now, and I realize sometimes people, they probably put too much weight or stock in the recap because, it's not a guarantee. But to your point of vetting the company to make sure it's probable, because like you said, it could be a massive number.
Yeah. So not only vetting them to evaluate offer from offer, DSO to DSO, the probability of them hitting a recap, but also right now, with the level of turmoil the market is in from a banking perspective and a private equity perspective, making sure they can close the deal, the upfront deal, because we're privy to a lot of information that other brokers and doctors are not. And the reality is that right now, there is kind of a bifurcation in the marketplace that's occurring between who has capital, who is going to have the ability to reach a successful recap over the next couple of years, and who has the operational infrastructure and the pedigree to operate in an inopportune environment through a potential recession. We spend an inordinate amount of time keeping up with who's being aggressive now, who has money, who doesn't have money, who we believe is going to hit a recap at a favorable outcome and who isn't. That alone is a massive job for us.
Yeah, it would seem that, we talk, there's all different types of brokers out there, some less desirable than others. And what you're saying is it's the same way in the PE world. Not all PEs is created equal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are buyers right now in the marketplace that we know that don't have capital that are bidding on practices. They're hoping that over the next few months, they find a new capital partner and are able to close on the deal that they have under LOI.
That's like one of those "we buy houses" signs. They'll go put a house under contract and then find somebody to flip it to or go find financing for it.
It's happening right now. And look, it's not necessarily their fault in the sense that from a banking perspective, things have tightened up. And because of that, a lot of DSOs are going to market looking for a new capital partner so that they have runway to continue growing. But in order to find a new capital partner, they have to prove that they have a pipeline for growth. They have deals under LOI. So you don't want to be signing an offer with a DSO that has to have a capital event occur in an inopportune environment in order to close your transaction, or you're going to be led along for the next 6, 9, 12 months. Like you said, one of your clients took 18 months. So a lot of it is vetting, who's able to actually acquire practices today and close in a timely manner. And there's a reshuffling of the deck that's occurring right now. And a lot of what we do is spend a lot of time on the phone getting intel on and going to meetings. Like we just were at the ADSO meeting in Orlando, spending time with buyers and putting our ear to the street and trying to constantly keep track of, who's who in the zoo.
This is absolutely fascinating. So if people want to get in touch with you and whether they're interested in selling or not, or they want to at least see what selling looks like, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. My cell phone, 512-660-8505. Always like to offer that up.
Say it again. Say it twice.
512-660-8505. Best thing to do would be to probably text me to schedule a call. My calendar is, a little hectic. You can reach me by email. That's Brannon, same as your last name, BRANNON at dentaltransitions.com. And I encourage people to visit our website. That's dentaltransitions.com. There's a DSO transaction resource tab. It's got a lot of podcasts, articles, webinars that do, a deeper dive into this topic.
That's fantastic. As we close down here, as we wind down, are there any questions that I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground. I mean, look, when it comes to educating our clients and talking about a DSO transaction, it's a crawl, walk, run process, right? And the crawling is the valuation piece, the education piece. So we go through a tremendous amount of questions and vetting with our clients as we start to engage. Anybody that's thinking about going down the DSO path, whether it's tomorrow or 5 years from now, I'd love to have a conversation with them and just start, talking about what this environment looks like and how it applies to their particular situation and practice.
Well, Brannon, I really appreciate your time on the podcast today.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Financial Flossing Podcast with Ross Brannon.
This has been another episode of Financial Flossing with Ross Brannon, guiding dental professionals to a brighter future. If you liked what you heard, consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. For more on Ross Brannon, visit rossbrannon.com.
Ross Brannon is a registered representative, Coastal Equities, Inc., and investment advisory representative, Coastal Investment Advisors, Inc. Investment advisory services are offered through Coastal Investment Advisors, Inc., and securities are offered through Coastal Equities, Inc. Member FINRA, SIPC, 1201 North Orange Street, Suite 729, Wilmington, Delaware, 19801.